Hey everybody, this is Perch, and this is kind of late night, last minute interview, and you'll see more why. But I'm here with James SIlvani. Hey, how you doing?
I am doing outstanding. How about you?
I'm doing okay. I break into that intro very naturally, right? It's well practiced at this point.
It's like butter on the
Yeah,
side.
well, I'm excited to have you on here. Our buddy Wes kind of pointed you in this direction, and you've got a Kickstarter coming up. I want to get right to it, and then we'll talk a little bit about the book. But want to send people your way because there's not much time left. Is that right?
No, no. The campaign for this ends on Halloween morning.
Okay.
Uh, I guess it would be 9 a.m. Pacific time. But yes, there are pretty much 3 full days left to back to Kickstarter.
So people need to get to it.
Yes.
So all right. So jump. So this is just different. We're jumping right to it in the sense of urgency, and people should check it out. Definitely, there's a link. You're seeing a link on the screen. But tell us about this book. It's Pirates: A Graphic History. So what is this book?
So this book is you always hear about the elevator pitch, right?
Yep.
And break it down to the simplest term. It's a graphic novel about the history of pirates. There's not much really to add to it, but I will. This is 170 now because we hit one of our stretch goals was to add extra material to the book.
Awesome.
And we hit that. And that's really what it is. I start at the Bronze Age and go all the way through modern times with an emphasis on of course, the one everybody's most familiar with, which is the golden age of piracy, which was from about 1650 to 1730. And you get a pretty much complete timeline of everything that happened when it comes to no good degenerate punks on the ocean in fancy shirts wanting to steal your stuff. So we get through that. The middle section is actually Piracy 101. It teaches you how to be a pirate. Teaches you the workings of a ship. Teaches you how to load a flintlock. Teaches you what the good stuff to steal is and the best places to sell it during that time period. And the last section is a biography of famous pirates. So you get biographies of Anne Bonny, Blackbeard, Black Bart, Sam Bellamy, all the good ones, and plus maybe a few you never heard of in there.
No.
And then that extra part on the stretch goal is I'm going to include an activity book at the end of the chapters, which is word games and how to draw tutorials and things like that.
Oh, very nice.
And the tone of the book is, the only way I can describe it is ridiculous. So, because I like things, you could do another dry history book. You can just do recounting. It makes it a little more exciting when you do it as a visual, as a graphic novel. I don't know if you remember this but when I was a kid, and we had book reports to do on, Treasure Island or Frankenstein or Moby Dick or something like that. Man, those were a slog to get through.
Oh,
but if you had the classics illustrated to read, that made it all that much more fun. Because then you could read the comic book version of it. My topper on top of this is that I try to make it funny. I try to make it irreverent. It is definitely an irreverent look at history. Kind of the way a show like Last Week Tonight or something handles the news. That's the way I handle history.
I like it.
So yeah,
I love it. And those classic illustrated. I mean, it always strikes me. You remember those books? They were kind of pocket size, about like that, and you had the little. You'd have a kind of different, but you had a page of text and illustration every single page, and then of course you had the full blown comic book versions. But
right.
I mean, that stuff was perfect for getting kids to read. And I mean, I grew up reading the classics that way.
Yeah, if I remember, they were called. I think there was a set of those. You're talking about the small ones.
Yeah.
That were called Little Big Books.
Yeah.
Oh God, I read the hell out of those. My, I lucky I'm lucky to come from a family of comics readers. My dad, he was born in the 20s, and he used to collect a lot of those square bound small comics where it was comics either throughout or it was a page of prose and a page of illustrations. And he kept those all from the 30s and passed them on down to me. My brother, who's about 15 years older than me, was a big 60s comics reader. So he had all the DC, the Vault of Horror, even the Archie comics. Again, passed those all down to me. And that's where my comics reading heritage comes from, is my family's hand-me-downs.
It's nice when families are supportive. I don't know. I grew up with a lot of the horror stories of the mom throwing out the comics and all this kind of stuff. But like you, my family was super supportive of comics, and even as a kid. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, you're reading a ton of material as a kid, and I mean, you're trying to hook kids on comics. This would be the way to do it.
It's reading. I mean, you're learning how to read. You're enthralled with reading. I was lucky that my mom, she had before I was born, had a very short-lived tenure at Disney. And when she saw that I had an interest in art and I had an interest in comics and had an interest especially in Disney stuff, she was nothing but encouraging. She never was like, "Don't waste your time. Learn accounting," something like that. They also liked it because when I was growing up drawing all the time, they could take me anywhere, and I could just sit there quietly and draw the whole time.
No, that wasn't bad for parents. You kind of self-entertained.
Nowadays, it's just all kids stuck on their iPads being quiet the whole time. But I was there drawing, honing my craft, I guess you could say.
Learning your career while entertaining yourself.
Absolutely.
I love it. I mean, speaking of Disney, so in terms of your background, for those of you listening right now who don't know you, you do have that very extensive history doing a lot of work that are kind of Disney properties,
Yes.
and for a lot of different companies. You've done work for Boom, for IDW, for Dynamite. I'd love to talk about that, but tell us, how'd you get into doing a lot of the Disney characters? Was it just kind of the style of your work, or?
Well, it was when I got out of college. One of my first jobs was doing T-shirt artwork, T-shirt graphics, creating stuff. The company I worked for had the license for Marvel, a few other things, but the main gig was the Ninja Turtles, and this was 90, 91, when they were still big from the 80s.
Oh yeah.
So I learned how to do licensed characters at that point on the job, learning how to do the Turtles. What was nice is that expanded into doing some licensing artwork for Mirage. And eventually that led me to a gig doing some comics for Animaniacs when it was part of DC Publishing, Warner's Publishing. From there, I started doing kids' books, and then took, about 15 years off from doing comics. Because, back then it was fun. Didn't really pay the bills all that great.
As opposed to now.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that the opportunity, I saw that Boom Studios back in 2008 was doing the Muppets comics, and I was a big fan of Roger Langridge at the time, and I followed anything he did, and so I was reading the Muppet comics. Then I noticed Boom Studios on their website had a message board for artists to put up their work, and I thought, this might be fun. I did a 2-page sample Muppet comic, posted it, and by that afternoon I had a job.
Oh wow!
It was one of those. Yeah, it was one of those real things you don't hear about in comics, or you hear about them and you can't believe they're true, but they could only be true.
Nice.
Yeah. So what had happened is they followed behind on one of the Muppet storybook comics, and I got a call from Aaron Sparrow saying, "Hey, I saw your stuff on the site. Are you available now?" And I had 2 weeks to finish a pencil and ink an entire issue, and he kept me on for the rest of that miniseries. But then he wanted to keep me busy until we started the next round of Muppet comics and said, "Hey, can you do some covers for me for some of the other Disney properties we're doing? We need Mickey, we need Finding Nemo, we need The Incredibles. Just for shits and giggles, there, why don't you throw us in a Darkwing Duck cover? Just do whatever you want to do." So I did that. What's that?
It's all coming together now. Yeah.
It's all going. Yeah. Long story short, he called me the next day and said, "We're going to take you off of the Muppets, and we're going to do a Darkwing Duck miniseries." So I was a huge Karl Barks fan.
Yeah.
Those were the best comics. The first comics I ever paid my own money for. Back at the dime store, they used to sell a plastic baggie with the Gold Key collections of the Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck comics in a bag. You get 4 in one bag. And, I would buy those by the ton and just read those. And so when this came up to do Darkwing, I thought, I'm going to be a Disney Duck artist. There is no way I can turn that down. And it's opened up a lot of opportunities since then. And done a lot of covers for the IDW and the other Boom Duck comics, and it's been great ever since. And then once the Darkwing ended, then I'm moving on to Pirates.
Yeah, I mean, to give the people listening some perspective, I mean, you did how many years were you on Darkwing Duck?
It was off and on. So the Boom run lasted 18 issues. So, a little short of 2 years, but we also had an annual in there. Sabrina Alberghetti took over the artwork on doing for the main story, but I was very privileged to be able to do a backup story with Tad Stones, who created Darkwing. So that was a little page. It was kind of neat. At Target now, they carry a book of 100 years of Disney comics.
Yeah,
where it has a retrospective of everything, and it's great. They included the Darkwing story that I did with Tad in there in its entirety. It's only 4 pages, but it's still kind of fun going into Target and seeing my stuff in there.
Yeah.
So that was for the first run. Then there was about a 2 or 3 year break where nobody had the Disney Comics license, and then a small publisher in Canada picked it up, named Joe Books. And they had the overall Disney license, and one of the main books out of the gate was Darkwing, because we were pretty much ready to go on a new series, and we were lucky enough to be able to continue the old series that we had done. And we only got 8 issues out of that. Unfortunately, the company wasn't on the best financial footing, so we had it ended there. But we've got another 4 years of stories ready to go. So if anybody ever did pick that up again and want to continue our work, we're ready to go out of the gate on that one.
I have to imagine. I mean, it's a timeless character, but you also mentioned something earlier that I think you used the word, you got to know how to do licensed characters. Right. What does that mean, though? So licensed characters are kind of interesting because, how much kind of artistic freedom do you have there, and where are those guardrails? I mean, I'll preface this: a lot of people have a lot of opinions on what they think the requirements are on this, but rarely do we actually hear from somebody who's vast experience doing licensed characters. What are the guidelines there, and what do you mean by that?
It has to look like it was produced at the studio. It has to be within there are guardrails. So when we first started doing the Darkwing books, there wasn't a style guide available. Right. A style guide is turnarounds, looking at the character from all angles, different expressions, different poses, things like that. We were lucky enough to get to raid the Disney archives to make photocopies of some of the old model sheets and character sheets, but not until we were already well into the 3rd issue of the book. So I was having to rely on screenshots for little details here and there, background characters, This was before any of the episodes were available on regular video, so I was scraping YouTube at the time for
Oh man.
whatever I can find. But it just has to look like it comes reasonably from the studio. I think the biggest compliments that I ever got while I was doing the book was people would tell me that, oh, this looks like it was part of the show. It captured. It's not even necessarily getting a model, but as long as it captures the spirit of the show. It was Disney Afternoon. People think of it as a kid's show, but it still had a complexity to it. So it had a nuance that you're trying to capture, because the show's parody. It's you're parodying Batman, you're parodying the Shadow, you're parodying the pulp feel to it, and with these ridiculous, overblown skylines and architecture and such, you have to really. That's as important as doing the characters.
For sure.
So, and again, it has to look like it came from the show. So I still think I have my style that I bring to it. Like I've seen the new Dynamite comics.
Mm-hmm.
Those are much more on model than I think I ever did, and that comes from, I'm sure, an edict from Disney. And I don't know if this is really common knowledge, but there is a studio system for doing Disney comics that's been in place since the 50s, where everything is done out of a studio in Milan. And it's sort of an assembly line. They have one person doing one character, they have another person doing another character, because they're more specialized in it. They have people doing backgrounds. And that way it keeps with that aesthetic that they're trying to keep.
Right.
Now, when it came to the Boom stuff, they had nobody in studio that did the Muppets. They had nobody that did Darkwing. They had nobody that did Disney Princesses, because these were all more unique American things. The European audience that they were used to doing stuff for hadn't really embraced those. So that was another nice point for me, is taking a trip to Europe one time and seeing my comics on the newsstands in Italy, because they were importing them back over there. So, but yes, I'm happy that they haven't gone back and erased it and redrawn over what I had done. So, to make it more aesthetically the same.
I mean, it's hitting me. Like, you were put in a very difficult position, I think, with this. So, if I can break it down, you're needing to do these books. You're needing to do them on script or on spec.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Disney reviewing them to make sure they're aesthetically like the shows. You have a limited amount of material to draw from, though, mm-hmm. and very little history. I mean, the show had been on and everything else. Plus, with Darkwing Duck in particular, it is a parody. I mean, not parody, but I mean it's drawing influences from other things which are not Disney's owned. So they've got to borrow, but not borrow too closely in order to make that show work. And you're expected to kind of somehow map that and come together with a story and get somebody to approve it. I mean, that's a lot of plates to spin.
Comics will break your heart, kid. It really was. So our schedule was, I had 2 weeks to pencil the issue. Then the pencils would be turned over to Disney for approval. What I would do after that is then I would immediately start on the inks from the previous issue that had just been approved.
Oh man!
And have 2 weeks to ink the book. So it was a schedule. I look at some of the books, modern comics. I don't know how these guys do it on a monthly schedule. I mean, it's crazy when you have to draw things in proper perspective. And draw vehicles, and you can't cartoony stuff up. So,
well, and the timing itself is hard enough, but on top of all this, you need to be incredibly creative, and you need to fit inside of a mold that Disney's going to approve. How tough are those approvals? I mean, are they looking closely, or like what's that process like?
So, if you're reasonably on, at least this is my experience. I mean, it's completely different now because, like I said, they have that tight studio approval system
Right.
is in place. Um, our joke amongst ourselves when we were doing the book is, um, somebody at Disney, when they're looking over the approvals, they look at the folder that says Darkwing Duck and they say, Darkwing, do we own that? Is that one of ours? It was, Disney Afternoon was really a forgotten franchise at the time. We're talking 2010 to 2013. So they let us get away with a lot. As long as we were reasonably on model and we weren't, showing boobs or something like that. I think
a very different Darkwing adventure.
Yeah. His darkest adventure.
Yes,
we did get away with quite a bit. One thing that I was, I guess, sort of known for was my Easter eggs in the backgrounds of the Boom Run. I would throw things in from the standards characters, which are Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. I would throw things in from the features, from Pixar, from anything I could think would be funny in the scene as a background Easter egg or as a background character or such. I would, throw in whatever I could. Nowadays, you couldn't get away with that. As a matter of fact, that was one of the edicts we got from when we were doing the Joe Books comics, which was with the new publisher. They came back and said no more Easter eggs. So I have a feeling too. So Dynamite now has the Darkwing Duck license, and they recently did a Kickstarter for the complete Darkwing Duck collection, which includes their comics, the Disney Afternoon comics, or the Disney Adventures comics that were the little digest comics sold in the newsstands, and as well as the stuff that was published by Marvel and Disney Publishing in the past. The one thing that was left out was our comics that we did through Boom and Joe Books. And not sure what the reason was. Can't say, but I have a feeling the approvals would have been a little tougher with all the Easter eggs and all the references I made in the background because they haven't, to my knowledge, really been reprinted since, except in Europe. There's been a couple of collections that they've done of our original miniseries, which was the Duck Knight Returns, and so who knows? Who knows? I
just think that would be so tough to you got to be creative to a point with your work matching to somebody else. I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot to put together, and I guess it also strikes me that the people who are successful, and clearly you were, with all the material put together, you were successful doing this in this kind of, incredibly complex constraint. There has to be a lot of just good common sense on your part. Like, enough to I want to reference kind of this movie in this genre because it's going to be funny with this thing. I'm not going to have him go bust a hooker over here.
I am in comics. I have no common sense whatsoever.
Okay, fair enough. I love it. Well, so just again to circle back, and once again, if you're joining us, I have no idea why you would click on the video and then come in the middle. That seems very strange, but whatever. Things happen.
Somebody just found the volume button.
Yeah, I look at the stats of the videos I put up somewhat obsessively because I'm just curious because they don't make sense. I do have a decent amount of people who are not watching at the beginning and somehow watching in the middle, and I do not understand that whatsoever. But anyway, the magic of the internet.
If there was only a measure on how many to test how many shut-ins you have.
Yeah, well, it's comics. Anyway. Pirates: A Graphic History is this book. Now, you mentioned earlier, and I kind of glossed right over it, but how many pages is in this book?
170 pages.
Jesus.
This was it was a project. When I started it, I was thinking maybe 100 pages, and once I start writing, this is my first project that I've written myself. So I had no idea how to, properly format anything or such. So my entire book was written out on copy paper by
Oh,
hand.
okay. Okay.
And I think, I'm sure a lot of people in the industry are the same thing. I think visually. So
Yep.
I lay it out first. I lay out the panels first, how many things I'm thinking I need for this page, and also to give a little variety to look through. I think the biggest critique I get of what I do is I still work on a grid system of doing comics. I don't understand all the fancy image comics, slashing panels back and forth and floating nonsense. So I work pretty much on a grid. So I draw out my grid. I lay out what the point is I want to make on that page. I'm still a gag a page writer, and when it all came down to it, it turned out the first draft was 150 pages, and kind of expanded from there. But luckily, working that way, I have my layouts done ahead of time, so I can come back and it's easier to put it out on the page. I work in Photoshop to do all my work. When I was doing the original Darkwing comics, I was doing everything by hand, and that was a chore.
Okay.
It was nice because then I had a nice bundle of artwork to be able to sell the originals of, but yeah, whatever that profit is, it's not worth the hassle of not being able to do this in the computer and finish it off that way. So much happier doing it that way. But also did the lettering myself. Did doing the colors. I'm getting a little help with the coloring here and there. Originally, I was looking for an outside colorist, but it's so flashy these days. Everything is all lighting effects, and that doesn't really say pirates to me.
So, no, we've lost something there. I think people got too excited about Photoshop filters for coloring.
They really. I look at the aesthetic that I wanted on this, and the only thing I kept coming back to is the way Mike Mignola's Hellboy books are colored. Just the flat, dusky kind of colors that Dave Stewart does. I mean, those are just fantastic. Really, the only comics I read these days are I read The Goon and Hellboy. So that's where I get that coloring aesthetic for him. I think Dave Stewart does both of those. And then I read Love and Rockets, which is in black and white. So, but I pick up the other comic I really love the coloring aesthetic of is Human Target.
Oh, yeah.
With Greg Smallwood's art on that. I mean, what a fantastic coloring job on that. And the artwork and everything is, God, what a neat read that is. But if I pick up a Batman or a Superman or X-Men or anything like that these days, it's just too much with the colors.
It is.
And it almost takes away the imagination you should be putting into reading these.
No, it really does. And I mean, you look at some of this stuff and you remember, I was recently reviewing and looking at some of the Alan Davis. Very, very different thing there. Okay. Alan Moore.
Imagine Alan Moore's Excalibur books.
That would have been a very different Excalibur with Claremont and Moore. Anyway, no, Davis. And they've reprinted some of these issues, and it feels like it ruins his art for me with the recoloring that's gone on there. It's like taking all of the kind of charm of what Alan Davis used to bring. I hate it. I wish they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I'd say the one exception I would put on that is when they did that remaster of The Killing Joke.
Yeah.
I kind of like the coloring on that one better.
I think they did a good job of that.
Yeah, that was it, because Brian Boland's art is just so dynamic. And I think the new coloring job really kind of enhanced it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Agree with that. There's a couple. They're supposedly doing the Batman the Cult with a new coloring job, and I'm in slight terror over that. But we'll see how that comes out. But yeah, exactly. Sign of the cross right there. Um, so you're doing 160 pages, which just, yeah, I mean, I don't mean to pour salt in the wound, but that is insane. And you've got this hardcover book out, so there's a bunch of tiers, like all things. And have you enjoyed the Kickstarter crowdfunded experience? Is that fun or?
The Kickstarter experience is just as much work as doing the book, or if not more work than doing the book
Yeah.
itself. I mean, it is a hustle. I feel lucky in terms of when I do conventions and stuff. Conventions are a great moneymaker for me. I've kind of pulled back on it recently to work on the book, but it's not what you have at the table, it's the hustle. It's the hustle that you have to put into being a salesman, to giving the customer what they want as far as their artwork or the books or whatever. And again, this is definitely a hustle that you have to do, because you have to post several times a day, saying what's out, when it ends, what's going to be inside. But when I hit that my funding goal on the first day, that was one of the greatest days of my career. I mean, it was so satisfying. With doing what I do, and this is, I think you will get this from a lot of artists. When I'm known for a well-known property from Darkwing Duck.
Sure.
When you're doing something original that nobody knows, that it's whether it be a book like mine, which is nobody knows me from Pirates before this, or if I had an original character or such, that it's scary, because you usually get a lot of crickets when you post original stuff online.
Right.
And the way that this was embraced and funded on that first day, and hitting my stretch goals, has been very overwhelming. I can't thank everybody enough who's supported it so far, and whoever else supports it between now and when it closes. You have my undying gratitude, and I will get all of you the best book possible that I can put out.
Well, I mean, it looks beautiful. First of all, thank you very much. You shared with me some of the pencils there, and I was looking through it, and I was doing it with maybe you're somewhat your target audience, although I think this could read for everybody. I'm sitting down there with my daughter. She's 14. She loves this stuff, and just it's beautiful work. I always do a bad job of explaining this stuff, but there's a life to it that people can pick up on. And so, you take these topics and kind of going full circle back to, school and I went through it, and I'm watching my kids go through kind of teaching history, and that's usually everyone's least favorite subject. And then here you're bringing kind of this whole aspect of things to life for people. It was you had a hit with her anyway. She was looking over. I was like, I'm actually, the guy's waiting now. Like, now I need to get over there to start this interview, and she was quite excited about it. So, no, it looks absolutely beautiful.
I'm happy that she enjoyed it. I really, I mean, people know me from Darkwing. They know the scope of my work. Of course, most of the people that read it were 35, 40-year-old guys, but
Sure.
I wanted to make it so these guys who watched it as a kid could show it to their kids and be proud to show it to them. Same thing with the pirate book. I wanted this to be read by everybody. That's why the subtitle of the book, the book is called Pirates of Graphic History. Subtitle on it is, well, not that kind of graphic.
Right.
It really is, there's no overabundance of blood or gore or sex or anything like that, even though these are people who did blood and gore for a living. They were killers. And even in the Disney song On the Ride, we pillage and plunder and rifle and all that. They set out there what they did, but it's still done in a fun way. And I really didn't want. I wanted something my nephews could read. I don't have kids of my own, but my nephews to read it. their parents to read it. Really, anybody could read it. So
Yeah.
I hope it came across that way.
No, it did the job. I mean, it worked, and I think you mentioned earlier you had a style of putting a gag on every page, and I'm enjoying the you get these images of these pirates, and they're clearly, I mean, there's dead bodies there, but you're leaving out the pools of blood and everything around it.
Right.
And then it's this one. There's one panel where you're representing kind of two ships that are fighting, and you put 50 blams in the panel, and it's just such a great visual
So
level.
my favorite artist and my most influential artist in my life was a guy named James SIlvani. And if for anybody out there, if you ever read Cracked magazine growing up,
Yep.
he and back in the 50s and 60s, he used to do a lot of the EC war comics, cowboy, the old West comics, horror stuff. I read it was more influential from Cracked magazine, but I was just fascinated by his work because he was such a draftsman as far as figures and backgrounds and expressions, and just nailed everything. But his sound effects were so ridiculous on the page. There would be a shootout in the street between two cowboys, and the sound effects would say blam, blam, blamity, blam, blam. And
Yes.
He's one of those artists who I get it. Like, I get what he was trying to do with his serious draftsmanship, but his silly way of doing the actual comic panel itself. And I think that really rubbed off on me. And so, when I was doing the lettering on the book, I thought, I could do it by hand. I could, because when we did the Darkwing comics, of course, the lettering and the sound effects were all done by an outside studio. But on this, I figure if I'm doing the lettering and the sound effects myself, I'm going full John Severn on this one. So
yeah, it's great, and just various visual gags. And there's a lot of kind of modern contemporary things in there as well that you're throwing in. So it did remind me of, and I've chatted with, of course, there, and I was chatting with him yesterday morning, plenty, and I see a lot of those gags you did in some of the Darkwing Duck books here. I mean, for sure, it's there.
Yeah, it's at heart. I'm not. I think of myself as a cartoonist. I read comics for the fun of it. I read. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a comic strip artist, newspaper comics. And of course, by the time I graduated college, newspapers were already on their way out. So if I can bring a little bit of that to a comic book page, the fun, they're the funnies, they're the funny pages, and I still think of comics first and foremost as funny books. So if I can bring a little bit of that, and it was like in like a Fat Albert, you have fun, but you may learn something. So that's what I'm hoping with this book.
Well, I mean, again, it's a beautiful book. Again, on 160 pages, and the cost here is nuts. I mean, no offense, but okay. So your digital copy is $10, and you get a physical copy, and this is a hardcover.
Well, almost a hardcover.
Okay.
So that is the 5th stretch goal that we're trying to hit right now.
Gotcha.
So far we've hit 4 of our stretch goals. So if you order the book, you get a set of stickers, you get the extra pages, you get a Cursed Pirate bookmark, and the last one we just hit is an enamel pin with my own unique Jolly Roger pirate flag design on there.
Nice.
And then we're on our way, hopefully by the time this ends on Halloween, to everybody will get their physical copies upgraded to a hardcover. So It'll look great between your copies of War and Peace and 50 Shades of Grey. Right on. Right.
That's your crossover audience you're hoping for.
I'm really hoping.
Why not? So, I mean, it's a great deal. And when do you think this book actually fulfills? Like, when do you think this would get out to people?
So here, my timing is this. The book is written. The book is penciled. It's about a third of the way inked. Inking should be done by Christmas, and I will have the colors done probably within a month after that. I'm having the book printed in China. Okay. Unfortunately, but their scheduling is they have the Lunar New Year, so everything shuts down during February.
Right.
I'm sure there'll be a queue after that. Really, I'm setting the book to, I have it on the Kickstarter that the book will go to print or I will receive them in April, and they should ship soon after that.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Yeah, and I definitely want to have it done because I do want to get out on the road a little bit next year and start promoting, probably starting with San Diego Comic-Con. And that's, I grew up in Southern California, so that's still considered my hometown con.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So hopefully I will be at Comic-Con next year, but I will definitely have either way out, the copies of the books finished and out, and everyone's hooked by then.
Well, and like I said, and I've seen it for myself. You got your pencils done. You got a lot of pages in there. This would be a great, end of school gift for somebody. So this is something. I mean, there's a lot of people who listen to this channel, and I think there's a lot of comic fans who grew up with comics, love comics, in some cases struggle with how to give comics now to this next generation. And many people they're giving manga at this point. Because it's like, here's a copy of X-Men number, 18 legacy issue 538. Here you go. Please start reading comics. It's just harder. And yeah.
When I go to a kid's birthday party, 5 or 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, I have the books already set in my head. I will always give a graphic novel to the kids. To the younger readers, it's Dogman or Captain Underpants. A little older is maybe Last Kids on Earth, and such. But the go-to that I will always give away, no matter the age, is Bone. I think Bone is a wonderful place to start. For any reader. I didn't discover it till I was an adult. Back in the 90s, I think it was still on the first third of the entire run, and that really rekindled a love for comics for me that were not superheroes. I mean, all I was reading at the time was Marvel and DC. I was, bringing home $30-40 worth of comics every week, but it was just all Cape comics.
Yeah,
and that truly showed me what could be done in the comics medium. And that there was still an audience that I hadn't seen for since the old Karl Barks comics. And so, if what I'm doing, ends up as a gift for someone, more power to them. I think there's I would be happy to include it as a gift.
I'll tell you, one of the more common questions I get, because I mean, at this point, I don't actually try and come up with new material anymore. I just rely on people sending me questions and then half-assed answer them. But a lot of people ask the question of, I would like to give comics. What am I supposed to do? I see people giving, they're pushed into giving manga because that's what a lot of kids are asking for these days. That's a dodgy proposition because not all manga is created equal, and manga does have a way of drifting along just fine for 3 or 4 volumes, and then suddenly we're gonna have a hot tub scene. Anyway, just why not? But this would be a perfect gift for people like that. First of all, it's great for somebody who just wants this great illustration, because it really is amazing illustration. Good gags, good jokes, good history. Great thing to put on your shelf, but also a great thing to then pass along and to these your friends, your kids, whoever it might be who's graduating school. Keep them reading through the summer. I mean, it's just all of these pieces come together. It's wonderful.
Right. It's when I started off on this journey doing this book, I had no intention of doing a hardcover because I wanted something to be read. The one year I gave somebody a bone comic, to one of the kids. Checked on him 2 years later, and this thing was rolled up. It was dog-eared. It was a very well-read book, and to me that says it was loved.
Yeah,
because they took it with them everywhere. That's how I never collected comics. I was a comics reader. I read them. I drew little things in the margins, doing my own little Sergio Aragonis gags along the way, and they were loved. They made me love the medium, and it showed physically. And I was hoping, gee, if I could do something like that. That's why I thought this is always going to be soft cover. It's meant to be rolled up. It's meant to be thrown in a bag. It's meant to be taken with the kid wherever they go. And then I heard the feedback from the public who was buying it. They say, is there going to be a hardcover available? I want a hardcover. This is my thing. I want that people want a hardcover. So, and then a majority of the graphic novels that you see for kids, your Dog Man and such that are out there, they're all hardcovers.
They are.
Yeah, so that made me think, okay, well, let's make that a stretch goal. If people really want the hardcover, and let's see how much they want it. And so yeah, that's how I came up with the last stretch goal being a hardcover. And that being said, I do have one more stretch goal after that. A couple of artist friends have all agreed to do a guest artist gallery.
Okay.
That will, but I'll get to the hardcover stretch goal first before I make any more announcements like that.
You mentioned because I've been over to Europe quite a bit, and the comics there are, a lot of them are hardcover, the Panini books that you get in grocery stores, and they do have them. I do wonder because actually it brings back such memories. I mean, for me as a kid, I was folding the comic up, putting it in the pocket, trying to hope it. And I'm sure I lost comics just riding the bike home, and the comic is in the back pocket. It's somewhere between point A and point B. It vanished, but.
Where did I put that Amazing Fantasy number 15?
That's right. Damn it. I think I really do feel like we've lost something a little bit with with variant covers and things going into bags. I mean, it always kind of broke my heart a little bit selling comics, and I would have the option for people to pull box that the comic would just get bagged and boarded right into the pull box. Right. And people would take it and go home, and I'm like, I know that they're never actually going to take the book out and actually read it anymore. They're just completing their runs, and it feels like such a.
At my high point of collecting comics, I went to my local shop was Nuclear Comics and Skate. In Laguna Niguel, and every week I'd pick up my comics. He'd ask me the same things: bags and boards. Never took them. Never did. I read my comics, and I read them. I threw them in a box, and when I was done, if it was something I liked, I went out and bought the trade afterwards. So I could have something to read again and again. If not, they went into a box. I gave them away. Gave them away to the Goodwill. I gave them away to the library. Any place that kids are going to say, "Oh, what's this?" They pick up a comic, and hopefully it makes an impression on it.
Yeah, I mean, to each their own, but I really do. I don't know, the whole grade and slap a book, just it feels so wrong to me.
I think the first time that somebody from CGC came to my table with someone else to witness me doing a remark on a book was I thought they were playing a gag on me.
What are we doing right now? Like this can't be what this industry has become.
No, I'm happy to do it. I mean, I'm also one of those people that I have a hard time charging for signatures on this stuff, but I know it's important to some people. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, everybody collects in their own way, but
yeah,
look, I think it's a beautiful book. I got to stress, if you've listened to this point, and I'll put some urgency at the beginning too. You've got like 48 hours probably when you're watching this to get your ass over there and buy this book. So
right.
make sure you do it. Now, you do always have, I don't know, maybe this is the wrong thing to say as we're trying to get urgency, but you can extend things to some extent or sell after a program, can't you?
Yeah, you can. That's with Kickstarter. That's an option you have to choose before
Ah,
uh,
gotcha.
before the campaign starts. I really, again, my first Kickstarter, I had no clue how this thing was going to go, so I didn't want to be too ambitious on my first thing out. So um, I thought I'll hedge my bets and try and do everything while the Kickstarter is going on. That being said, I will have. I am printing extra books, so I will have them for sale on my website. I'll have them for sale on
Good.
yeah, at conventions afterwards. Uh, but it's if we can get this thing funded now and funded in a hardcover, it'll make it all that much nicer when you can buy the book later. So
Oh, yeah.
and again on the sale, there's many options. If you do like your books signed, if you do like your books remarked or such, I do have tiers for that. So um,
Well,
usually I'm one of those people who will sign and remark something in every book that I do, regardless. But I realized with the volume that I was dealing with here, I better limit it and make them separate tiers. So,
it makes sense. It makes sense if you've done it. I mean, first off, congratulations with the success. You got
oh,
to
thank
be
you,
good. You're already pushing out there. It looks great, and
thank you
now we're
so
just trying to get
much.
the extra mile on there.
Yeah,
So
let's make this a hardcover. Let's make this let's maybe get that gallery going and see what we can do. But I really appreciate you letting me yammer about this thing
ah,
because it's
I mean, the pleasure's all mine, and I think let's get this out and let's get this published. And I'd love to talk to you about other things that you're doing in the future and anything you
absolutely.
haven't. There's
This
so
is
much. I know we talked about the license work, but I think there's just so many more questions. I mean, I did work for Disney for a period of years, and I remember what that was like, and it's magical and it's also terrifying at different times based on how they're going to look at books. So
I've worked for Disney in several different capacities, doing comics, doing merchandise, things like that. The wildest, and I'm sure we can get into this in another point, but there was a series of video games called Epic Mickey,
yep,
uh,
of course.
which was out there, and I was uh, had a job working on one of the sequels, which never came out, which was called Epic Donald,
Oh wow.
and that was the Epic Mickey 2 didn't sell as well as they wanted, so they canceled the sequel after that. But it was such a gratifying experience in terms of the people I was working with didn't really have a history of knowledge of the backstory of Donald and Scrooge and such. And because I was such a voracious reader of the Uncle Scrooge comics, the Carl Barks stuff, even the Don Rosa stuff to another extent, with the life and times of Scrooge McDuck, and um,
Hmm.
I had all this knowledge of the characters in my background. So I said, "What are my parameters here for doing the concept art for levels I would like to see in the game?" And they were pretty much go nuts. Carte
Oh wow.
blanche, do whatever you want to do because we have no rules at this point. So I was doing stuff from the comics. I was doing stuff from the shorts. Donald in Math Magic Land,
Oh
stuff
man.
with Chip and Dale. Um, really, the only rule I had was, oddly enough, no Darkwing material. because
Huh.
they wanted to save that in case there was another sequel after that. So
Interesting.
yeah, but
Yeah,
again,
I'd love to talk to you more about that.
but it was it was because it was concept work. There wasn't a lot of rules as far as the making things on model. It's just as long as it stuck with the spirit of what they were trying to do. So
First off, James, thank you very much for spending all the time. I mean, you spent nearly an hour talking about the stuff. I would love to talk to you further. So let's get this going, and then if you'd be willing to give me more of your time, I'd love to keep talking with you. And really,
anytime,
and look,
big fan of the show, and would love to come on anytime.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
Look, I think for the people listening here, look at this two ways. I think it looks great. It's funny. It's a lot of pages for great value. So this would be great for you. If pirates are not your thing, though, chances are somebody in your family it is. So whether it's your kid, a cousin, a nephew, a friend, whatever. Or just somebody who appreciates this style of work, and there's a lot of us out there who do. Think about this as a great gift. So, James, thank you so much for taking the time, and
Thank you.
best of luck and
Yeah,
congratulations.
thank you.
Awesome.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate it.